Peace be upon you. This is Said Mirza from MillionaireReason.com. And in today's video, I wanted to address this question that I received quite a bit as to how do you pray, or that the Quran alone, people think that the prayer is this wishy washy concept and it's too abstract. We don't really understand what you mean when you say that Salat is not prayer and that you don't pray to God. That's a big thing. Why don't you pray to God, etc., etc. So, um, God willing, I will be looking at this question and try to answer it to the best of my abilities. But before I do that, I encourage you, if you are a Qur'an Alone follower, if you're a believer in God in the last day, that you join the forum that I've created for the believers. It's called believersbrotherhood.com. It's a great place to learn more about the Quran alone and access the materials that are available, as well as connect with fellow believers and also ask questions to increase your knowledge. So, to start to tackle this question, first of all, when we say Quran alone, this is not a group in the sense that there's a Sunni group or a Shia group, because the Quran alone group is actually a lot of different people with a lot of different ideas, and which is a good thing in my opinion, because first of all, it's not a cult. Okay, that's what the Sunnis and the Shias. That's what they are in. They are in cults because they all try to look the same, dress the same. They have the same slogans, the same phrases. They all have the same thinking. They all follow the same cult leaders. That's what a cult is, by definition. So, thanks be to God that He delivered me from the Sunni cult. I was born and raised in a Sunni family, so and I was obviously brainwashed, so I didn't see it. But now I see what it was, what it is. So that's the first thing. Now, God Himself in the Quran, He calls us to reason. He calls us to think. Um, the Quran is not. It says there is no compulsion in the doctrine. We are not compelling anyone to follow the Quran alone. God guides whom He wills, and He misguides whom He wills. This is in the Quran, so obviously it's not for a man to guide or misguide. But you would do good to think for yourself, to question what you've been taught. There's nothing that I'm saying that I say take on face value. I always say verify. My book is titled "Will You Not Reason?" So I'm a big proponent of someone who thinks for their own, and even if they come to a conclusion other than mine, that's still fine. At least you did your due diligence. You have something to stand upon when you face God on the day of judgment. Because the Muslims, unfortunately, they don't think. They are born and raised into this paradigm. They never question it. Most people don't. And that's why you have the Christians and you have the Jews and all these sects. They're all pushing an ideology that stifles reasoning, that stifles your mind. And that to me is the biggest sin. So, um, me as a believer in God in the last day and a believer in the Quran, that I consider the Quran to be clear, complete, fully detailed, not because that's what I consider. It's actually the facts. The Quran itself claims to be. So, when the Quran claims to be clear, complete, and fully detailed, sufficient, then we need to look into it for answers. So, this whole business of how do you do salat, when first of all, if you are coming from a Muslim, Sunni, or Shia background, this is a big thing for you, right? Because you have been from birth, your life revolved around this prayer, and mine too. I did the Islamic prayer, the Salat, for the better part of my life. Actually, half my life. When I was guided by God and I started looking in the Quran, I had these questions too, like why is this Islamic prayer that is so central that I am told to perform 5 times a day, even though I didn't really do it 5 times a day? Why is this not in the Quran? Why is the details not in the Quran? Why is the 5 prayers not in the Quran? These prayers by name are not found in the Quran. You can twist verses and wrangle them and try to derive these 5 times of prayer, but the fact of the matter is that these 5 names of the prayers, Salatul Fajr, Salatul Isha, and Salatul Wasta. This is all there is in the Quran. Now, Wasta means median or the best. So, if you want to take that as a proper noun, that's up to you. But regardless, Maghrib is not in the Quran. Asr is not in the Quran. So we have a problem here, right? Because the Islamic religion that claims to take the Quran as a foundation and says that this prayer is so central. Every time you go to a social gathering, it's always the same thing. Did you pray? When are you gonna pray? What time is the prayer? Where are you gonna do the ablution? In retrospect, I do remember that this was this thing that was in the background all the time. Now, is my position that we should not be praying to God? We should not be remembering to God? No, obviously not. The Quran exhorts us again and again to remember God. Those who remember God sitting, standing, or lying down, glorify God, ask God for His favors, for His mercy, supplicate to Him. Um, a genuine remembrance. This is really the key. And in the Quran, the word salat, as Brother Gerrans has um, repeatedly pointed out, just means duty. And I know this is kind of an abstract concept, so I'll try to make this more concrete because I want you to understand that just because we're saying salat means duty doesn't mean that this is some wishy-washy idea that a duty could be done by sleeping, and so if you're sleeping you're doing salat. I'm not talking about any of this. These are concrete things. When we say salat, as used in the Quran, it means duty. What we're saying is that the duty is to uphold the commandments of God. See, Muslims have made salat into this thing, into this ritual prayer, right? With the movements, right? That's all there is to that, to salat for them. But God is using the word salat to signify the other duties as well. This is key. Look, it's not gonna make a difference if you do 5 times a prayer, but then you cheat, lie, steal, you take advantage of people, you manipulate people, you don't control your anger. Um, you're basically acting as the disbelievers in every other aspect of your life, but you are doing this 5 prayer. Think about that. Is that not hypocrisy? So when we're saying prayer, when we're saying salat is a duty, we're talking about upholding the commandments of God. I think it's a good idea to listen to what I'm saying and verify with the Quran, the verses I'm giving you, and make up your mind. You want to follow the footsteps of your ancestors who didn't know any better and who were following the footsteps of their ancestors, or do you want to do your own due diligence on what God means by the word salat and actually implement the salat that's in the Quran? It's up to you. And I am not I am not saying that the word salat does not mean to remember God, to supplicate to Him. All I'm saying is that the word salat is a more expansive term. It means more things, not just that thing. And we're doing a great disservice to the Quran when we take this word salat and just say it means to do an Islamic ritual prayer, which is not found in the Quran and which is basically idol worship, because we are prostrating and bowing down to a stone idol. The Qibla, you're facing the direction of a stone idol, the Cuban Mecca. If you want to go ahead and do that, knock yourself out. But I don't care for prostrating or bowing down to a stone idol. That's not what I think. Well, that's not what I know that salat is. Okay. Now, salat in the Quran, and we're gonna go through this step by step, so I don't want to jump the gun. So I wanted to look at the verses in the Quran. I tie everything back to the verses of the Quran, and I encourage you to read for yourself. So let's look at this. This is reader.quranic.com. And obviously, this is Brother Gerrans' translation, the Quran, a complete revelation. It doesn't matter. You can read any translation you want. You just have to. You just have to take these verses and think about them, and think about, does this make sense? Because what I'm saying makes sense. So let's look at here. This is chapter 20, verse 14. So this is in the context of Musa. This is his first encounter with God. So let's go a little bit back. Verse 11. And when he came to it, he was called, O Moses, I am thy Lord, so remove thou thy sandals. Thou art in the sacred valley of Tua. And I have chosen thee, so hearken thou to what is revealed. I am God, there is no God save I. So serve thou me, and uphold thou the duty from my remembrance. The hour is coming, I almost conceal it, that every soul might be rewarded for that for which it strives. And let not turn thee away from it him who believes not in it, but follows his vain desire, or thou wilt perish. So, this is the prime directive to Moses to uphold the Salat for what? For my remembrance. Let's look a little bit down because this subject is again picked up here. Here it says, um, then he asks God for help and to appoint Aaron as his basically right hand. So it says, verse 30. It says, Aaron, my brother, strengthen thou by him my strength, and make thou him share in my affair, that we might glorify thee much, and remember thee much. Thou dost see us. See that? So the duty of for remembrance of God included glorifying God and remembering Him much. That's really the point of the Salat for God's remembrance. Like I said, Salat is an expansive term. It is a duty. As most people who watch my channel, you are married and have kids, right? What, as a duty, as a responsible duty of the father, his duty is to make a living, clothe his children, take care of them, um, be there for them when they need his help. That's your duty. It's not just one duty. It's not, feeding. It's all these duties. These are all duties. This is the word salat used in the Quran. Here we go. This is chapter 3, verse 35. When the wife of Imran said, My Lord, I have vowed to thee what is in my womb in consecration, so accept thou from me. Thou art the hearing, the knowing. Then when she had given birth to her, she said, My Lord, I have given birth to a female, and God knew best to what she was to give birth, and the male is not like the female, and I have named her Mary, and I seek refuge in thee for her and her descendants from the accursed Satan. So her Lord accepted her with a comely acceptance, and caused her to grow with a comely growth, and placed her in the charge of Zachariah. Whenever Zachariah entered upon her in the chamber, he found with her provision. He said, O Mary, whence comes this to thee? She said, It is from God. God gives provision to whom he wills, without reckoning. Thereupon Zachariah called to his Lord, saying, My Lord, give thou me from thyself goodly progeny. Thou art the hearer of supplication. And the angels called to him as he stood performing the duty in the chamber. God gives thee glad tidings of John, confirming a word from God, both honorable and chaste, and a prophet among the righteous. Said he, My Lord, how will I have a lad when old age has reached me and my wife is barren? He said, Thus is God, he does what he wills. So, and it continues on. Anyway, what's the point? Well, what is he doing? He just read this carefully. He goes to the chamber of Mary and he asks her, "Where did you this food arrive that is there, the provision?" And she said, "It is from God. God gives provision to whom He wills without reckoning." And he is impressed by her devoutness, her tawakkul, her um, belief that God will provide. Thereupon, right there, thereupon, Hunalika, this is then and there. There's no cut. Then and there. Hunalika means then and there. This is what the word is used in the Quran. Thereupon Zachariah called to his Lord, right there. Okay, he's in that place. Where? In Mary's chamber. Thereupon Zachariah called to his Lord, saying, My Lord, give thou me from thyself goodly progeny. Thou art the hearer of supplication. So he does, this is the dua. This is, the Muslims say dua. This is it. But this is happening in that salat. Thou art the hero of supplication, and the angels called to him as he stood performing the duty in the chamber. So God responded right there. The angels were sent down, and they called to him, and as he stood performing the duty in the chamber, see the same place. This is where he was. So what do we get from this? We get from this that Zachariah was standing and calling to God, and he made that request to God, and God answered. This is it. This was the salat. There's nothing about doing the prostrations or facing a qibla, and all this stuff that the Muslims have put in there. There's nothing that salat just means he was doing his duty of calling to God, of asking him for something, and God responded. Okay, let's keep on going. Okay, verse 238. This is chapter 2. Preserve the duties and the median duty and stand up for God humbly obedient. Now, this is the context is that God is giving us the commandments, and specifically the commandments up here are about divorcing women. You see, you do no wrong if you divorce women and if you divorce them before. So here, then after that, God says, preserve the duties. So automatically, we know that He's referring to the duties that to obeying the commandments of God that He has given. And then He says, and the median duty was salatul wusta. The word wusta means the best, or the right-minded, or the median, between two extremes. That's how the word is used in the Quran. So he's saying, and the median duty. So this is the median duty is what? And stand up for God, humbly obedient. And if you fear, then walking or riding. But when you are secure, then remember God as He taught you what you knew not. Interestingly, this comes in the middle too, see? And then it goes back and then it starts talking about, and those among you who die and leave wives, a bequest for their wives. So now again, the duties have started. This is the duties that you have to implement as well. Read it again. Preserve the duties, okay? The duties, the commandments of God that He is giving us. Chapter 2, if you know, is full of commandments. It forms a large part of the writ of God. Okay, and the median duty, Salat al-Wusta, the best duty, the the duty that remembrance of God is greater, right? So nobody is arguing here that you should not remember God or you should not pray to God. What the problem is that Muslims have made these duties into this one duty, right? These five, it's really prayer, right? Five prayers, which they are deciding, they are telling you, okay, this is the actions you have to do. You have to face this direction. You have to say this. You have to say that. Cult like behavior when there is nothing like that in the Quran. God is giving us the prayers in the Quran, what you're supposed to say. This is all in the Quran. There's um, in my book, Within Our Reason, God's Arguments in the Quran. I dedicate a whole chapter. I pulled out these prayers from the Quran, what you're supposed to say to God. You can say whatever you want, but God is already giving us examples, what you should say to Him to glorify Him, to remember Him, and also what the past prophets and messengers said. So this is all recorded in the Quran. You don't need to go out and look for stuff. Okay, and stand up for God, humbly obedient. See, now this is the problem. Now here, the question is, how do you pray? There you go. How do you pray? You stand up. And if you fear, then walking or riding. Then you don't have to stand up. But when you are secure, then the implication is that you should stand up. Then remember God as He taught you what you knew not. This is it. You stand up, and before that, you have to do the ablution, which we'll cover, and that's it. There's no facing a direction. There's no this whole movement, this whole insistence that you should face the direction of the stone idol. This is idol worship. I'm not gonna do that. This is the whole reason I don't go to the mosques, because this is, you have to do it their way, right? You try changing the format of the prayer. You say, look, I'm not gonna prostrate to the direction of a stone idol, and they're gonna be throwing stones at you. This is a fact. Okay, so let's keep going here. This one is again telling you the format. Okay, chapter 4, verse 101. I encourage you to read all of this in context, by the way. And when you are traveling in the earth, or you do no wrong to cut short some of the duty, if you fear that those who ignore warning will subject you to means of denial, the false claimers of guidance are an open enemy to you. So, if you fear, the one before that said if you fear, but here if you fear specifically that those who ignore warning will subject you to means of denial, as in they will attack you, then you do no wrong to cut short some of the duty. And it's telling you, okay, this is what you should do. um, And I know Muslims have their Salatul Khawf, which is the prayer when you are in war, and they change the format of their Salat to fit this verse. But it's just saying to cut short the duty. So to cut short would mean to cut short the duration. That's kind of a stretch if you take that to mean, okay, you're gonna change the duty. Because if you're gonna say, okay, you're gonna, modify the Salat to go along with what verse 102 is saying, well, then where is the full description of your Salat in the Quran? It's not. The Quran is saying it's clear, complete, and fully detailed. So we have a problem, don't we? Let's look at this verse 102. And when thou art among them, uphold thou the duty for them. Then let there stand a number of them with thee, and let them take their arms. Then when they have submitted, let them be behind you, and let another number come that has not performed the duty, and let them perform the duty with thee, and let them take their precautions and their arms. Those who ignore warning wish that you would neglect your arms and your equipment, so they might assault you in a single assault. But you do no wrong if there is a hindrance to you from rain, or you are sick, that you lay aside your arms, but take your precautions. God has prepared for the false claimers of guidance a humiliating punishment. And when you have concluded the duty, remember God standing and sitting and upon your sides. And when you are at ease, but uphold the duty. The duty is upon the believers, a time limited writ. The duty is upon the believers, a time limited writ, as in there's specific times, and those times are also in the Quran. This is all, everything is in the Quran. You just have to look. Um, but these 5 times that the Muslims do, they are not in the Quran. The only 2 ones are the Salatul Fajr, Salatul Isha, which is the daybreak and the sunset, and obviously at the night also. That's super supererogatory. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. Anyway, that's an additional prayer that you can do. This is it, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, but that's what the Quran says. Now, here's something interesting. If you are taking the word, because it says here, it says, وَلْيَأْخُذُوهُ أَسْلِحَةٌ فَإِذَا سَجَدُوا. So, فَإِذَا سَجَدُوا. Now, sajadu, sajad, as you may know, if you're coming from Muslim background, Muslims say it means to rub your forehead on the ground while you're on your force, basically. But the Quran does not use this word in this manner. I invite you to verify this. I'm not going to go to that one, but here's something that doesn't make any sense. How are you going to take your arms and then go on your force with your forehead on the ground? How? You have swords, right? You have shields. How are you going to do that? You have arrows. You know how dangerous that would be if an army started doing that sort of stuff in the midst of battle? So, obviously, here the word sajadus means submit, as in you submit to the commandments of God, which are being recited to you when the messenger is leading the salat. See, this is a great place when they're doing this to boost their morale by reciting the verses of the Quran. You know, this makes sense. What Muslims are doing makes no sense. That's what I'm trying to get at. Okay, next one. Okay, this is chapter 62, verses 9 onwards. O you who heed warning, when the call is heard for the duty of the day of assembly, then hasten to the remembrance of God, and leave commerce, that is better for you, if you but knew. And when the duty is concluded, disperse in the land, and seek of the bounty of God, and remember God much, that you might be successful. But when they see trade or diversion, they disband towards it, and leave thee standing. Say thou, that which is with God is better than diversion or trade, and God is the best of providers. Now I know Muslims will say, see, it's saying Yawm el Juma, which Juma just means Jama, it means the day of assembly, congregation. Okay, fine, it's your Friday prayer, right? And I know what the Saudis do. They forcibly shutter down businesses and basically beat people to go pray. This is what the cult is, right? When God says there's no compulsion in doctrine. But regardless, here it says, when the call is heard for the duty of the day of assembly. So this was obviously a day when the people were assembled. Obviously Hajj comes to mind, that event that happened where you had the believers come together. It could refer to that. Regardless, even if you're saying it's a Friday Salat, you still have that problem, right? That it says, then hasten to the remembrance of God, and when the duty is concluded, disperse in the land. So this is all there is. You hasten to remembrance of God, and when the duty is concluded, and in that duty, you are supposed to be standing and remembering God. This is it. Okay, now one of the one things that I alluded to before, I want to bring to your attention. This is chapter 2, verse 177. It is not virtue that you turn your faces towards the east and the west, but virtue is one who believes in God and the last day, and the angels, and the writ, and the prophets, and gives wealth in spite of love of it to relatives, and the fatherless, and the needy, and the wayfarer, and those who ask, and to manumit slaves, and who upholds the duty and renders the purity, and those who keep their covenant when they make a covenant, and the patient in affliction and adversity, and during conflict. Those are they who are sincere, and it is they who are those of prudent fear. Now, you could make the case here that the duty is the commandments of God, oppose the duty, or you could make the case here that the duty here is referring to the remembrance of God. Regardless, it is not virtue that you turn your faces towards the east and the west. So it is not virtue that you are turning your face towards the direction of the Kaaba. This has nothing to do with anything. See, this is the problem. Muslims, they have this whole format pat down. They stick with it religiously, stringently, without exception. But there's nothing in the Quran about this format. Even God is saying it does not matter whether you turn to the east and west. What matters is that you believe in God in the last day and the angels in the written, you uphold the duty and you give wealth. This is what matters. Are you doing that? No. But you wanna do the prayer perfectly. This is delusion. This is what a cult does to you. You lose your mind. You just start acting like robots. You follow the sheep. Okay, last one. This is what I was referring to, ablution. You're supposed to clean yourself, cleanse yourself, wash yourself before you can commune with God. Chapter 5, verse 6. O you who heed warning, when you rise up for the duty, wash your faces and your hands to the elbows, and wipe your heads and your feet to the ankles. And if you are unclean, purify yourselves. And if you were ill or on a journey, or one of you come from the privy, from the toilet, or you have lain with women, then find not water, resort to clean oil, and wipe your faces and your hands with it. God wishes not to place any distress upon you, but he wishes to purify you and to complete his favor upon you, that you might be grateful. And remember the favor of God upon you and his agreement which he agreed with you when you said, we hear and we obey, and be in prudent fear of God. God knows what is in the breast. See, all these actions and jumping up and down in the masajid, in the mosque, and calling to the azan and wearing perfume, and this whole activity, I know I see, the thing is, I have lived among Muslims. I still live among Muslims. I've seen everything. I've done everything. So I know what this is all about. This is all show. It's nothing to do with the remembrance of God. How are you gonna remember God when you're in this place where the kids are running around? And anyway, I'm gonna go into the rant territory. I'll try to stop myself. So what's interesting is that Muslims, even though God is giving us the directive on how to clean ourselves, how to do the ablution, Muslims are not satisfied with God's requirements, with his directions. They go ahead and they do more stuff. You see, the Muslim wudu ablution is above and beyond what God says, because what they're actually doing is they want to say, look, we follow our ancestors and they knew better. So I think that should be sufficient to answer that question by those who, I don't know if they're sincere or not, if they're seriously looking for an understanding or not. But I figured this would be a good video for those who are sincere, who are coming from a Muslim background, and there's this shock related with leaving all the practices of your ancestors, which you were born and raised on, and you saw people doing. Um, that's a big shock. I know. I've been through it. And when I came to the Quran alone, I this is my own personal story. I looked in the Quran for these actions, and I justified a lot of the things I kept on doing. I mean, I still prayed with the Muslims in the masjids, in the mosques, and I justified it saying, look, okay, fine, they have their own embellishments and everything, but they are still holding on to the core concepts, which is the sujood and the ruku and the remembrance of God, etc., etc. But as I learned more, as I grew in my understanding more, as God guided me more, He increased me in knowledge. I started seeing that the word sajud does not mean prostration. The word ruku does not mean bowing. And really, what the Muslims are doing is idol worship. They are facing this direction. Their insistence on facing this direction of the stone idol. This was, I think, the straw that broke the camel's back. And I realized that this is a cult. These guys are basically idol worshippers. They have no concept, and really, if you get down to it, they're not really remembering God. To them, this is just an activity, a social activity that everyone takes part in and feels good about themselves. And I'd be better off remembering God on my own in a closet, away, and being in private with Him. And so I stopped going to the mosques. This is it. And then obviously this whole business of having the name of God and the name of the messenger Muhammad side by side, that ticks me off too. Um, I'm not okay with that. And this is something that if you go in the mosques, you will see. You will also see a picture of the stone idol Kaaba. Not in all of them, some of them. Well, I shouldn't say all of them. I haven't been to all the mosques, but the ones that I've been, and I've been to a lot of mosques, that's not something that's in all of them, but they do put that in there. So that's an idol. And then if you look at the symbology, I think Brother Gerrans made a video about that. I'll try to dig that up and put that in the drop down box. He goes over the symbology, the Masonic architecture of these mosques. So that was something that really, got me thinking. And also the crescent moon. This is the symbol of the religion of Islam. And this crescent moon, if you know anything about how these symbols work, Islam is actually a religion that worships the moon, and Christianity is a religion that worships the sun, and Judaism is a religion that worships the stars. That's their symbology. This is something the masses don't understand. They don't have access to these things. But if you actually go in and look at these religions in earnest, they already telling you, their symbology is telling you what they are all about. And while they claim to follow the way of Ibrahim, if you read in the Quran, Ibrahim turned away from the stars, from the star, the moon, and then finally the sun. So he turned away from all of these things. So in a way, um, if you want to follow the way of Abraham, you have to turn away from these sects, these religions, these cults, and go your own way and make sense of what God has sent down, and take God as your helper, your ally, your protector, your guider. This is what it's all about. This is submission to God. Anyway, this video is kind of going on and on, so I'll just leave you with these verses, and take a look at them. Read my book. I've dedicated have part of my book, actually half of my book, is dedicated to the practices of the religion of Islam, and what the Quran has to say about it. So if you are having trouble, please read this material. It's already out there. You can't just go on and make this one comment like, how do you pray, and then just go on your merry way. If you're sincere, and if you really want to know, the information is out there. We've made sure it's out there. So other people are doing this work too. It's not just me, but the information is out there. I was sincere. I was looking for the truth. I found it. And God says that we will surely guide those who to our paths, those who strive for us. So if you are sincere, you'll find it. If you're not sincere about it and you just want to play around, that's another story. Anyway, that's it for now. God willing, until next time, peace and blessings be upon you.